Welcome to Slash a ProRevenge, where after OP is singled out and targeted by his boss, he causes a dumpster fire in the company. Our next post is by Donut Clouds. My now ex-neighbor was pretty trashy. Cars sitting on blocks in the yard, cigarette hanging out of her mouth while she's 9 months pregnant, blasting Kid Rock tunes level trashy. Well, this lady decided that paying $1 per trash bag was just too much. Our township will only pick up your trash if it is in one of the approved purple bags though. So normal trash bags will just be left behind. The trash truck drives right past them. Her solution? Buy normal trash bags at the dollar store and have her 8-year-old child toss them over the fence into my yard. Now their trash is my problem. After confronting her, she just laughed. So I called the cops. They said that since the kid was so young, and there was no proof his parents told him to do it, there was nothing they could do. So, this went on for about 4 months. Me taking the bags of trash they toss into my yard, wrapping them in purple bags that I paid out of pocket for, and putting them out to the curb. Pretty fucking annoying. Not to mention the extra $3 or so a week I'm spending on trash bags. I'm slowly growing to hate this woman. It was annoying at first, but I was getting mad. Mind you, I own my home, and she was renting hers. So I get a hold of their landlord, and I offer to buy the house for a decent amount above market value, 17%. He jumps at the offer, and soon I am the proud owner of the house next door to me. Sure, it cost me $71K, but what price do you put on peace of mind? The very first thing I did was serve them an eviction notice, in person, across that same fence they like to throw trash over. That was 31 days ago. As of today, the unit is empty. I don't know where they went, but they're someone else's problem now. All because she didn't want to pay for her own trash bags. I think I'm going to knock that house down and make my yard bigger. I've been wanting to put in a handball court. Note for the profile stalkers, this is not the same neighbor with the husky. I like those neighbors. The things my malicious mind would do if I had money. Our next post is by Remarkable Youth 504. I had originally posted this in our malicious complaints where someone suggested I post in one of the heavier revenge subs. This happened almost 5 years ago. Some details are intentionally vague. This will be a long read, but I promise you it would be worth it at the end. I was working in an organization that was super toxic. So much so that we were revolving door, most employees stayed only for a few months. To counter this, our management put a 3 months notice into everyone's contract including the existing employees. It's not strictly illegal where this happened, but very unusual. I believe the idea behind that was to make it harder for the employees to find a job outside, as potential employers didn't usually want to wait for 3 months. However, this didn't work as most people simply quit and waited for a month or two before starting their job hunt. I was there for almost 4 years. I needed the money, so I put up with whatever abusive shit was thrown at me. My boss was a guy we'll call Vince, not actual name. Now Vince was not particularly good, but he sometimes respected the fact that I was the most tenured grunt in this organization. You note that after about 2 years, I was doing a lot of additional work in addition to my official responsibilities, primarily because I was the only one who knew how to do those. Everyone else had already left. This will become important later. Enter Rajesh, also not actual name. Rajesh was poached from a somewhat infamous company, and was literally flown in from a different continent. He was brought in to strategically improve our division. This was quite strange given that our division generated most profits. Within months, Rajesh made the environment even more toxic. He pulled Vince's team under him, and got Vince fired, and he actively encouraged us grunts to spy on each other. Rajesh also had it out for me from day one, until today I don't know why. He started making my life much harder than the others. This culminated in him taking me aside and telling me that I was not pulling my weight. Now at this point I was doing quite well in the organization, plus I have been doing a lot of additional work critical to our business since only I knew certain systems and processes. See, high attrition above. So I was quite angry. I started looking out. I wasn't still brave enough to quit and start looking. Fortunately I was able to find a job that was willing to wait the 3 months. So it was my turn to take Rajesh aside and tell him I quit. Boy, Rajesh was pissed. He went from denial, "You can't quit," to negotiation, "What if I give you a raise at the year end," before acceptance. Thus I was serving my notice, and working away like an honest bee, my usual work plus the additional work. At this point I was called in by HR and told that Rajesh wanted me gone. The insane part was that they wanted me to pay the company for the 2.5 months shortfall in notice. I obviously refused, then went back and checked the contract. Turns out that a notice of less than 3 months could only happen through mutual consent, and the initiating party, company if they wanted me gone sooner, or me if I wanted to leave earlier, had to compensate the other party for the shortfall. The next day, I stopped doing almost all of my work. I logged in and logged out my hours and did jack shit. I stopped doing any additional work I have been doing, and started taking it really slow on my primary job responsibilities. Since no one else understood the details of what I did, I knew it would be very hard for Rajesh or HR to prove that I was doing any of this on purpose. Then I sat back with my popcorn. Soon there was a complete meltdown all around. Rajesh would pull me into meetings and scream and try to bully me, and I would say nothing but smirk to his face. Next they tried to have someone else learn the additional work I used to do from me, so that they could do what I did. Remember I said earlier how I was the only one who knew some of the old systems and processes? Well, now I claimed I didn't really remember any of them, so obviously there could be no handover. Rajesh could do nothing as none of this had been my responsibility or part of my contract, since the leadership had been only too happy to see me do this for free. Soon my workplace turned into a dumpster fire. The HR Rajesh smartened up and offered to buy out my notice if I cooperated and helped transition my work. I refused. Then, to twist the knife further, I started having meetings with fellow grunts. Remember, everyone was always a newbie, and encouraging them to leave as well, indirectly, nothing that could implicate me. HR tried to get me to leave twice more, but I ended up serving the full 3 months. Remember the mutual consent part. TLDR. Boss screws me over and tries to extort me. I start a dumpster fire. Edit. Made minor edits for better readability. Thanks for the feedback, kind people. Edit 2, since a lot of people asked, the company is still around. They started outsourcing a lot of our work to Asia, specifically, the country that Rajesh was originally from, where I believe the labor laws are much less stringent, and employees are much more willing to put up with a toxic work environment. Rajesh is also doing very well for himself. He has now moved to yet another country, one a lot of Redditors are from, and is with an employer that employs a fuck ton of people. I suspect some of you reading this will come in contact directly or indirectly with him. My condolences. It is like the company forgot that it was made up of people. When the people are gone, so is the company. Our next post is by Think. I posted from elsewhere. Sweet older lady in our church was a retired nurse. Never married, no kids. She had a heart attack, and while she was in the hospital, her niece and nephew thought she was dying. They came and took her stuff. Her apartment was small, but she had some very nice crystal and silver, and some lovely antique furniture. When she came home she had no dishes and almost no furniture. Niece and nephew denied it, but the neighbors had seen them carting everything away. Several years later, she passed away. Her most recent will, dated after her heart attack, left $1 each to her niece and nephew. Everything else went to the church. Her estate was $9 million. Deleted. Our next post is by Kibby Fox. Let me preface this by noting that this revenge was not my doing. At least, not exactly. It happened back in the 90s, when I was in high school, and centered around the type of school I attended. So, in case you weren't aware, it's very common in agricultural communities to have what are known as farmers' schools. That's not a technical term, but more just something easy to define them. The schools are generally organized by the local farmers, and while you still study the various courses needed to get into college, you also study farming technology courses, and get credit hours for work study, i.e. working on one or more farms. The area I lived in was surrounded by a number of large farms which grew cotton primarily. So during the year, we spent time out in the field both tilling, planting, and harvesting. One of the farms near the school was this 1,000-acre spread that, like the others, grew mostly cotton, though sometimes they rotated to soybeans, or silage. Basically corn, but you don't harvest it. This farm had a long partnership with the school, so the students provided near free labor for the farmer. The farmer leased this property from some out-of-state owner, and paid them a portion of the revenue from the harvest. Imagine my surprise then, when I and many of my classmates arrived at the farm to do our work study, and the farmer instructed some to crew the sprayers and start spraying herbicide on the fields, while others, myself included, were to take tractors and discs and plow everything under. The farmer wanted every square inch of the fields returned to just dirt. We were shocked, to say the least, but after some discussion we set to work. It took us the better part of a weekend to do so, and when we were done the field was in a beautiful, if barren, state. The farmer thanked each of us personally, and paid us about $500 each. Quite the sum for a 90s high school senior. We returned to the school, told our headmaster that the contract was completed, and he informed us that the farmer would no longer be working with the school, and we'd be sent to one of the other larger farms for the rest of the year in our work study. It was probably 2 or 3 months later before word started going around about why we'd been instructed to destroy the crop. Granted, these were just rumors, but based on how things turned out for the farmer, I suspect there's some truth to it. So, apparently the landowner had decided that he was going to not renew the lease the farmer had on the land. This lease renewal just so happened to fall a few weeks before harvest season would start. Given that the average cotton farm earns about $1,500 per acre, a 1,000-acre farm would easily net the owner $1.5 million. About $500K of that being pure profit. I don't know what the farmer's lease was, but it stands to reason that it wasn't anywhere near that. So this landowner had figured out a neat little trick. Let the farmer get a good crop planted, and then refuse to renew the lease. The farmer would leave the plants in the field, and the landowner would just need to pay some contractors to come harvest it, and they'd earn a profit. Since at the time, the farmer's lease wasn't yet up, he decided to prevent that from happening. His act of revenge against the owner was to prevent them from cashing in on their hard work. Sure, it destroyed his farm, and he had to sell off most everything he owned to buy some property for himself, but he proved a point. The owner did try to sue the farmer, though he, the owner, really didn't have a leg to stand on, or so I was told. I think the court ruled that since the farmer was still under the lease when he had the land tilled under, then it was his property to do with as he wished, and thus the landowner couldn't tell him what to do with his property. I learned a rather valuable lesson from that man, beyond what I learned about farming. That lesson was, never ever cross someone with nothing to lose. Edit. Since it was brought up in the comments, let me add some details here. Cotton is one of the few crops which leave a negative nutrient value in the soil. Meaning that after harvest, even if you till the dead plants under, or even if you till them prior to harvest, you won't have as much nutrients as you started with. That's why farmers will plant another crop, usually winter wheat, in place and then till it under, rather than harvesting it. This is something commonly called a green manure, but it works to put nutrients that the cotton pulled out of the soil back into it. While the ground wouldn't have been completely dead or sterile, any crop planted on that tract of land, without further treatment of the soil, wouldn't have produced the same acre per acre yield that a comparable crop would have had he gone to harvest and planted the secondary crop. Which means that the landowner would either have to plant the green manure and spend money that way, or pay by the ton to use artificial fertilizer. Reap what you sow. Our next post is by deleted. So I'm living in Japan now and hear people ride bicycles a lot. You can't leave your bike anywhere, and you have to pay for parking, between $1 and $2 per day. There are very few free parking areas for bicycles. Most people leave their bikes at the same place, so they pay monthly, because it's cheaper, and you have your own space. This started a couple of weeks ago. Someone in my building started having a guest who decided to steal my bicycle parking space whenever they came to visit it. Sometimes they stayed the whole night, so I had to go to the station, pay $1, and come all the way home walking, which meant I would need to walk to the station the next day, getting up earlier, walk like 20 minutes to the station, while carrying my heavy bag. All the bicycle spaces have a number, which means they are reserved for someone. Mine is the 105, but this F-card decided to take mine whenever they came to visit. The second time this happened, I told the building manager, but they didn't do anything. The third time I saw the bicycle there, it was the same red expensive bicycle. I left a note in Japanese saying, "Please don't leave your bicycle here, this is my space, and I am using every day." I found the note taped, with the tape I used to tape it on their bike, to my parking space, and it had a couple of bad words in Japanese at the end. Basically he was not only stealing my space, but making fun of me by insulting me. Fine, it's just fine. I probably wouldn't have done anything about it if he hadn't written those words. This triggered me, and got the worst in me. This person did it again a couple of times, so I knew this would continue. I was thinking about buying another bicycle, a better, more expensive one I could use to go on cycling trips, so a good chain lock was needed anyway. I bought one of the thickest they had at the store, and decided to try its efficiency. I locked his bicycle next time I saw it there. It hasn't moved for the last 7 days. There were 2 notes. The first one was a very aggressive one, with more bad words and threats about going to the police, which I don't care, let's go that way buddy. Second note days later was an apology and they begged for me to unlock the bike, because they tried to break it but they couldn't. I guess he has learned his lesson. I'm pretty sure he won't do it again, but I just want to enjoy this feeling of victory a couple of days more. I will free it in 2 to 3 days, I guess. And number X200B. Edit. Thank you very much for the awards, the support and all the comments. You guys are amazing. In order to keep my name out of any legal issues, I changed parking lots. It is not as close as this one, but I could come back in a month or two, and I would be getting a new space, so it would be okay. I left a tiny and very discreet note saying I will free his bicycle in exchange of $100. I wanted to ask for more, but probably he won't pay it. I wrote tape the bill under the seat. I will wait a couple of weeks. If he doesn't pay, I will take it out at night, as far as possible from the place, steal his seat, cut the brakes and tires and all the other small pieces I can get or destroy. I can't steal the bike and dump her somewhere else because he locked it, so I would need to carry it. The lock I got is the thickest and one of the most expensive in the bicycle shop. You can't cut it with normal tools because the thing is as thick as my finger. I'm pretty sure you need some kind of industrial tools to cut it. It would be easier to cut the parking device, because the metal is thinner there. Tell him he also needs to pay your parking fee for the month before you unlock it. He was using up your space, so he should also pay for it. That was /ProRevenge. If you like this content, consider subscribing because I post new Reddit videos every day.